I mean, look at the independent power production issue and the overruling by legislation of the Squamish Regional District. They made an agreement with the Union of BC Municipalities that they would not put in independent power projects without consulting and listening to municipalities. When Squamish objected to an independent power project, the government tore up the agreement with the UBCM, with the Union of BC Municipalities, and overruled Squamish. So the reality is, over and over again, whenever a municipality tries to defend the interests of local citizens, this government simply legislates and overrules municipalities and their goals.
Well, they at that time in 2006, they said that they're going to think about it. I don't think they came out and said, we're going to overrule you, but we're going to consider it. And what happened after that?
In what?
The overruling of the rejection of the UBCM to basically the privatization of rivers.
They overruled them entirely, and they tore up the agreement, and there is no question that the provincial government is proceeding without the approval of regional or local governments to privatize almost every river in British Columbia. There is a private company that now has a license application on virtually every waterway in order to dam it and produce powers. And the government goes out and says, this is the greening of BC, this is green power that we're doing. Well, in effect, when municipalities and regional districts examine it, they see the real impact of this on our fisheries, on our recreational uses of our land, on the overall ecology of areas of British Columbia. You know, we know locally that this is a big mistake, but remember, this is again delivering to the corporate interests, not only in British Columbia but internationally, which leads to huge donations to the Liberal Party, future directorships on corporations for Liberal Party people, jobs like Gary Collins got as the CEO of Harmony Airlines. I mean, how do you go from being a flight instructor at a college to being the CEO of Harmony Airlines, except that everybody has been very, very friendly over the past few years. You know, this is the kind of thing that happens over and over again. And the corporatization of British Columbia is something that people are going to wake up and they're going to find that their province has been sold out from under them, and they're going to wonder what the heck happened. And I don't know how they're going to face their children and their grandchildren saying, well, it was on my watch that it happened. I was sitting back and I was watching this government sell BC out from underneath me, and I haven't got anything to leave you. Be rewarded.
Yeah, another issue that was also rejected by the BC municipalities this year here in Vancouver was TLMA. Can you tell us a little bit of what TLMA means, what is it supposed to do, and why do we need it?
Well, obviously we don't need it.
Right.
TLMA is another attempt by the provincial government to corporatize British Columbia, to answer the corporate agenda.
Yeah. It's a trade agreement, isn't it?
It's really a trade agreement, and what it is it's a provincial trade agreement that will allow the implementation of the General Agreement on Trade and Services and NAFTA on a provincial level. NAFTA and GATS only apply to the federal government, and so it's extremely difficult to force provincial governments into compliance with the rules of GATS and NAFTA unless they're willingly going to do that through an agreement like TLMA. It's a rush to the lowest standards. Quite clearly, even the Canadian Association of Chartered Accountants came out in the Senate and said TLMA is a race to the bottom in standards. The lowest standards will be applied in regard to professional qualifications and trade qualifications. In addition, it's a blatant attempt to set us up for various corporations to sue municipalities, school boards, regional districts, if our laws in any way impede their trade. So what they're going to be doing is we're going to find much more litigation against municipalities because of local preferences. If we decide we want to deal with local businesses, or we look at local employment as being a high priority, we're going to find that corporations come in and sue the municipalities under TLMA, demanding that our laws, our bylaws be overturned. And then a private board will make the decision, and we're not even allowed to make submissions at it. We may not even be allowed to be present at it. So again, I think what they said in Alberta when they talked about it in their Chamber of Commerce was, this is a great act because it gives business everything they wanted. And that pretty well says it all.
They talk about investment mobility. My question is, isn't investment already free to invest anywhere? What is that we don't have now that TLMA would add to what exists already?
Of course. There's already total investment mobility right across Canada, in fact internationally. Mobility of investment, the ability for multinational corporations to move their investments is part of globalization. It's part of the reality of all of our lives. But again, it's part of the doublespeak that the provincial government puts out to the media and puts out to the public. There's a certain 1984 Brave New World quality to what the government does, because they're very good at PR. They're very good at communication strategies, at buzzwords, of making it sound as if they're doing something positive when really there's a negative impact. And very often it's so complicated that it's difficult for the public to be able to dig down through all the details and find out what the real impact is. When we were dealing with TLMA at the Union of BC Municipalities, municipalities invariably recognize that this is not good for us and it's not good for our citizens, but the provincial government's imposing it regardless. They ignored everything that we said and are going to impose it. Because again, as I've told you, they're a bunch of bully boys who believe that with the media on their side, they can do anything they want.
What is the mobility of investment that they would gain with this agreement?
There is absolutely nothing that makes investment more mobile as a result of TLMA. And the reality for them is that a company that's doing business in Alberta can come and do business in British Columbia if they choose to do so. They simply have to do it under British Columbia laws. So the idea that they can't do business in our province is ridiculous. And but the government tries to make, investment mobility, that sounds good. It sounds like something we should all be for, is we should have investment moving with a great deal of freedom from province to province. We don't want to restrict investment between provinces. The fact is, that's not what this is about. This is about the corporate agenda, the ability for the corporate agenda to overrule local government or even provincial government legislation in order to advance their cause, which is about making a profit.
So a better word would be perhaps investment security rather than mobility, because it secures some.
I think that's an excellent way to describe what is happening. Is that one of the things that that the international trade agreements and TLMA do is try to protect the security of investments that come into a country or to a province, to ensure that the ability, as a result of a change of government, the ability for governments to enact legislation that will interfere with those investments is prohibited. So it's all about guarantees, in guaranteeing that your investment is protected, even though you made a bad deal with a favorable government to you. A new government that's more progressive comes in and says it's a bad deal, they still can't do anything about it.
And labor mobility would have to do with the standards of labor practices and that the government, local governments would require from certain trades.
Well, not necessarily, as it goes across all professional designations. It goes, it has a very broad base for looking at mobility between trades or professions. And in many cases what it is it goes to the lowest possible standard. Whichever province has the lowest standard, that's the standard that's applied in both provinces. So, you're, as the chartered accountant said, it's a race to the bottom. Is that whoever's got the lowest standard, that's the standard we'll apply.
So the trade standards are basically protection for consumers, and the province that local politicians would require from different labor groups.
Exactly.
But they don't want that, because that is a little bit of a impediment.
It's considered to be an impediment, and really it's anything that's an impediment to trade, impediment to business is what they want to avoid. And they want to give business an opportunity to be able to effectively take the government to court if the government is in any way impeding what they want to do. So businesses end up with far more power than your individual citizen has. You end up in a situation where your individual citizen can't do much about what the provincial government does. They have no way of protesting, litigating over the provincial government's unfair policies. But if you're a business entity in Alberta, suddenly you have the ability to sue the provincial government and to demand that the provincial government comply with what you want.
BC Union of Municipalities rejected somehow or wanted some assurances from that TLMA and the last meeting they had, last AGM. What has happened since then from the
As
provincial
usual, nothing.
government?
You know, as the provincial government, I suspect, will continue to put out the PR, which is what they've done all the way through. I mean, you know, basically what we got from the provincial government at the UBCM was, "Don't worry, be happy. You're just stupid. You don't understand." Is that if you only understood, you'd realize this is for your own good. That we, you know, and no matter how many times we told them, no, we do understand. We've got research. We've got legal opinions. Our own solicitors have told us these are the problems. Is that we've got solicitors that are renowned across Canada on municipal government telling us that we've got problems. They said, well, we don't believe that. We're not going to change what we're doing. That's too bad. And that's been their response all the way through. This government is nothing if they're not cocky and arrogant. They believe that they can do almost anything with impunity, and because there's such a strong support for them in the mainstream media, because they have so much money coming in from business, they believe that average people are going to continue to vote against their own interest and keep electing this government. It depresses me that your average working British Columbian is voting for a government that is working to take away the basic freedoms, the basic necessities, the basic infrastructure that working people need to have a successful province. And at some point, people are going to wake up and smell the coffee.
Mm-hmm. I hear you that municipalities are almost powerless and under the rule of the provincial government. Have you thought of moving into provincial politics from municipal politics, perhaps to change that mismanagement? Or
well, first of all, I don't think I alone could do it. I think it's going to require a lot of good people to make the decision to move into provincial politics and to take on the government. I have been a long-time councillor and mayor in this city, and I love being the mayor of Burnaby. It's a wonderful job.
But you feel frustrated because you're being stopped from having justice.
I feel frustrated that I'm not receiving the support from the provincial government that we need to build our city. I feel frustrated that very often the provincial government is interfering negatively and against the interests of our citizens. That being said, is that as far as the city of Burnaby is concerned, we're making great progress in this city. Is that we have a very just and equitable city. We have a financially very capable city. We've kept our taxes low. We have excellent reserves. You know, we're nimble. We're able to deal with problems. We've shown leadership in environmental issues. There's been so much accomplished, and each week we accomplish more. So in reality, as opposed to taking on the big provincial system and the frustrations that are associated with that, I like working in a very nimble, positive situation where we can deliver for our citizens on an ongoing basis. There's, great joy, a great enjoyment in doing this on an ongoing basis and seeing the results of decisions that you've made come to fruition in the city, to see people that are smiling because of decisions that help make their life better. And in many ways, realistically, we're the people with 8 cents out of every tax dollar. That's what municipalities get, 8 cents out of every tax dollar. 92 cents goes to the provincial and the federal governments. But with that 8 cents, we collect your garbage, we deliver your water, we take away your sewers, we provide parks and recreation, we provide roads, we provide economic development. We do so many of the things that people need to be able to have quality of life on an ongoing basis that, and you wonder, where does that 92 cents go? If 8 cents does so much, where does that 92 cents go?
Well, healthcare and education, all those other things come from the other government.
Well, and to a certain degree, but we're talking about governments that prioritize a $900 million convention center being built right next door to another convention center. We've got homeless people on the street. $900 million is going into a convention center. is that we've got a government that chooses to spend $800 million on a road for rich people to Whistler so that people can get to their condos quicker. Meanwhile, we've got massive problems. We're privatizing our hospitals. You know, as we're in fact not building more hospitals as infrastructure, we're privatizing those hospitals. So the projects that should be private, like a convention center, are built by the government. Projects that should be built by the government, like hospitals, are built by the private sector. What's wrong with this picture? What's wrong with this picture is Whistler is the #1 resort in North America. So why do we have to spend all of that money to promote the #1 resort in all of North America? Meanwhile, there's resorts all over British Columbia that are starving. There's all kinds of places all over British Columbia where just a portion of that money. I was talking to the other mayors at the UBCM, and we were talking about the issues of $900 million on a convention center. Could you imagine in any one of our cities, I said, what we could do with $9 million? Not $900 million, $9 million. And one of the mayors said to me, $900,000 would make a big difference in my community. And one of the smaller mayors said $9,000 would make a big difference in my community. So what you're doing is you're looking at sets of priorities that are entirely skewed. And what are they skewed to? Business, the corporate interests. The convention center is all about the corporate interests. It's not about the people in British Columbia. It's about the corporate interests. And so we keep giving up real significant change in our society, improvements in our society, in order for this government to deliver their agenda for the corporations.
If a significant number of voters in Point Grey would want to recall Mr. Campbell, you think that they should do that?
I think that Premier Campbell is underestimating the impact of some of his decisions on his own constituency. I think that he's underestimating the impact of Pacific Spirit Park and the University Golf Course and the decisions that they've made. You know, this is the most cynical provincial government I think we've ever had. It's the most political and the most cynical. The one thing you can depend on is that they will make decisions that are in their best interest, but very seldom will they make decisions that are in the public interest.
So those citizens of Point Grey, Vancouver Point Grey, who look at not just this fiasco on Canada Line and TLMA and their golf course, should they recall Mr. Campbell?
Well, recall is an extremely difficult tool, you know, to be able to utilize. You know, there hasn't been a successful recall in British Columbia. I don't even know if the legislation is still existent, you know, on whether or not it can still be brought back into operation. A lot of resources are going to be spent on attempting to get a recall, you know, I mean, remember Kevin Falcon's campaign, you know, have you had enough, when he went after the NDP, when he was supposed to be a private citizen standing up, you know, for the interests of private citizens against the NDP. He did the "Have You Had Enough" campaign. That was while he was.
No, I don't know what.
Oh yeah,
what was that?
That was in the first election for the Liberal government. Is Kevin Falcon?
What was the meaning of "Have You Had Enough"? What?
Have you had enough of the NDP?
Oh, all right.
That was his campaign. He was out there saying, "I'm just a private citizen who's had enough of the NDP, and I'm out here campaigning for the Liberals because I just want to see somebody else in."
Why can't you say I have enough of Gordon Campbell?
I think the important thing is whether or not people put their effort, rather than to a recall, is they put their effort towards a campaign. We're only looking at about 18 months, less than 18 months before we're in an election. Is that if people want to put their effort into changing the way things are, I would direct my effort to 18 months from now. Is that I think that Gordon Campbell may find that he didn't win that riding by a lot, and I think that he may find out that the public in his own riding are not happy with the way he's been managing things in his own riding. That he's been unresponsive to them, and in what I've seen, people really are not happy in his own constituency with his response. And when they brought these issues forward, there's been again that arrogance, that determination. I know what's best. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, and I feel that I'm protected, that I'm not going to be affected as a result of the dissent that's out there.